Welcome to the Diary of a Muse podcast. I'm Tess Day, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here with me, embarking on this journey of discovery and transformation. So today I'm joined by Jessica Miller, medical student at Edinburgh Medical School, as well as CEO of Cubble, which I'm sure we'll find out a little bit about later. Now, Jessica was banned and has been banned from Tinder and Bumble on multiple occasions. But she is an advocate for eradicating loneliness. And I have invited her here today so we can find out more about the journey, where it began, what she's doing now, and what words of wisdom she is going to impart to us so that we can all go away feeling a little richer and wiser and less lonely. So Jessica, it's absolutely wonderful to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tess. It's wonderful to be here also.
One of the things I did ask you, probably the only thing I asked you to bring along to this call today, is a quote, something that really resonates with you.
Okay, so I was thinking about this quote, and then I'll give you a bit of a background story. So, integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. So, I like to experiment with doing new things, as I think we should all try a little bit, even though sometimes it's quite hard. So, at the weekend, I went to a non-denominational church in the US, and it was eye-opening because the experiences are so different compared to at home. If you're going to any religious services or even non-religious services, it's so different. So I think when you hear people talk, and you never know where information might come to you from. So I took that away from the service on Sunday, because the truth is, it really is this. Like, we're all doing things all day, every day. And does it really matter what we do? Is someone really watching what we're doing? And I think this comes into play with a lot of the work that I'm working on just now with Cubble. It's that, we often forget that there's another human being at the other end of our device, or at the end of our conversation, or wherever it is and whatever we're doing. So I think if we just remember that integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one's watching, that we'll always be able to, you know, be there for someone else. And I think this is something that we're slightly lacking in the world, because with social media and the way we connect online nowadays, it just doesn't allow for that anymore, because it's almost as if, because of we're behind that screen, you can switch off and just do whatever you want and it doesn't matter. But I think the truth is, it really does matter, and we have to really be aware of this.
Yeah, I think it's I love the quote, by the way. I think it does bring up many examples where we think of our behavior, how we show up in the world, and then how we really are in the background at home, how social media and all the media, in fact, put such a spotlight on a particular way that we're supposed to behave to be accepted or to get recognition or to be approved of. Whereas actually, when we switch the lights off and we're sitting at home all by ourselves, who are we really? Who are we truly? And sometimes there's quite a big gap between the person we show ourselves in the world to be versus the person we actually are in our truest form. And I would imagine that somewhere in the middle there is where loneliness can rear its head. And maybe it's not loneliness, but it's this disconnect between who we show ourselves to be and who we really truly are at our core. So what is your take on loneliness, first of all? And then I would like to know what really drove you to sort of focus on research and find out more about this.
So I think, like, the thing is with loneliness, it's like it is everywhere, no matter what age you are, no matter what you look like, no matter where you come from. And it's something that I think we don't really take into consideration about just how much it impacts our physical and mental health. So over the years, like, I mean, within my own journey, like, I've lived abroad, which was quite, isolating, lonely. I've had family difficulties. And, when you don't have that secure, robust network at home, it's hard for you to feel connected with people. So I've had all of the different kinds of experiences myself. But then when I went to the medical school, like, we start to see how it's affecting patients and not just, say for example, it's just a couple of people, maybe a couple hundred people, maybe a couple thousand people. You'd be like, okay, it's not such a big thing to deal with. But the percentages are so high of how many people are feeling really lonely and it's impacting our health. So this is where it's like when you look at the research, the data, and most importantly, when you speak to people, it's heartbreaking just to feel not to feel how lonely they are, but to hear and to not only hear what they're saying, but also like I resonate very much with what they're saying because I feel for them because I've been there. And so like the problem is though nowadays we often don't just, you know, go to the park to meet someone. There's a lot of new boundaries that are people are not sure of. And so like before, if you were young enough, you would go to a bar or something or some activities and things like this. But everything has changed in the past like 10, 20 years with social media. So it's almost like where do we go to connect? I mean, the only option really is online as such. I mean, of course, if you're working and you're studying and you're, you know, maybe working in a big company, you can meet new people and stuff like this. But if you're not, like, where are you supposed to connect with someone? So this is where I ended up, like, you know, last year I decided, I'm just gonna go and see what the dating world is like because I've never really had any experience. And so I just opened up the apps and I thought it'd be as simple as literally finding the first person that you talk to and falling in love with them and getting married and everything like this. Fairy tale dream, as they say. And I guess it was a big bunch of naivety. But like I never, ever, ever estimated that a year later this is what I'd be doing. And it's just been one big crazy journey because when I realized that I'm not the only one suffering from using these apps, the dating apps, the friendship apps, or any connection apps. The thing is that everyone else is suffering too. And maybe there's a couple of people who are really lucky who have found someone and it's all worked out well. But for the majority of people, it's not quite the case. And I think when we look back on how people connected before, it was never done in this way. You never looked at a person's picture, like thousands of people's pictures, and said, "Oh, I like you, I don't like you." Because you know nothing about that person. You know nothing about whether they're a good person or whether they like the same things that you like or whether you guys could make a relationship work. And so this has been something that has now been kind of ingrained into our development that, you know, once you're I guess, of age, that you would just go to these apps to find someone. But it doesn't really, like, it just doesn't really work. And so that's where we've been working on really, really looking into what people want, how it's going to impact people, but not only just provide another app that does the same old nonsense that the current apps do. We're changing all the method, looking into it from a more ethical point of view, fully understanding all the psychological aspects of how people connect, why they connect, how to build long-term relationships, which will fundamentally in turn reduce the loneliness.
So Jessica, just explain to me what is Cubble in essence? If you have to paint a picture for somebody, how would they imagine Cubble being?
So our soon to be very famous tagline, as I like to make a joke about, is Cubble is a place to solve loneliness from friendship to dating and everything in between. So it's a place where you can go to meet people, where you can talk with people within your group for up to 48 hours. Once you've had a conversation with them, you can then decide whether you match with them and take the conversation further. Alongside this, we're having a heavy emphasis on making sure that we help you focus on developing your own interpersonal relationship skills, as well as watching your journey and how you grow within there. Because a lot of the places that you have these apps, they don't care about you as a person. They don't want to see you be successful and happy. They just, like, literally, they just want you to pay as much money as you can do in order for you to keep using their service. And so this is where I completely disagree with. I know everyone needs to earn money to keep the clocks moving and the businesses moving and everything, but I don't agree that this is something that should dictate whether you can have a connection or not. So I wanted to make it a place where everyone is treated equally. There's no barriers to race, religion, disability, or anything like this, which is something that often happens. And we shouldn't be judgmental, but like unfortunately, this is the way we have been brought up in this society. So it can definitely be the place to change that.
So almost removing a lot of the labels that are preset, that
Hmm.
when, you know, because I've been on a few of the dating sites as well recently, and oh, it's not my favorite place to go. I'm the old-fashioned girl who used to remember looking at a guy across the room, meeting, you know, eyes locking, and then he walks over or you walk past. Whereas now it is, like you say, this is swipe. So by removing all those labels and those barriers, you're giving everybody a higher sense of curiosity, but also not feeling limited or less than because of their differences. Um, and
Yeah.
that sounds really, yeah, sounds really exciting. So where is Cubble in its stages right now? Because I know that you've been in testing stages, you're still very much in development. So do you have any idea when we might have access to um, this experience?
So when we started out just at the end of last year, um, I set some crazy targets and I was like determined that we'd launch an app by September this year. So just over a month from now. However, we're scaling backwards. Like we're going at a very much slower pace. It's actually very easy to build an app. The thing is, I don't want to build an app that isn't going to actually help people. So we're doing a lot of work right now in developing our AI, which will help support the whole matchmaking process on the app. But also we're making sure that all of our psychological studies are done. So, and we have to build everything from scratch because what we're proposing hasn't ever been done before. So we're having to take a bit longer just to make sure that our AI is properly working and tested very thoroughly before people are able to use it. And in the process, we are still working and developing the app. So I'm hoping that at some point next year, we'll be able to launch the app properly. There will be further tests done and like once we've got the initial app out just to make sure features and functions work. But to get the real proper experience, it'll probably be more likely um sometime during the next year.
Super. I can't wait, and I know I'll be in touch and we'll probably talk again. But for now, what was the driving force? What was the catalyst that really made you decide to take this path, to build this legacy, which is what I'm hearing from you here is you're not just building a site where people can come and throw money and hope to get a result. You're creating something where they can actually grow through the process of getting connection and getting to know people and conversing. So what was that catalyst that picked this
So
path for you?
there's been like a lot of things, and I think I'm a really strong believer in things happen for a reason. I never get worried about anything that happens to me. I have, if you could say one thing about me is that always something is happening to me. Like there's always some sort of major drama in life happening to me. And you ask yourself, like, how is this one person constantly in the wrong place at the wrong time? Like literally, always. I'm always in the wrong place, wrong time. And I really try to prevent this from happening, but it just follows me as such. So all the experiences that I've had growing up through my teenage years and early adult life, I sometimes question why on earth am I going through these things? Like, do I really deserve the things that are happening to me? Like, what did I possibly do to suffer as such for so many years, so many years, so many things? And however, I accept that these things happen for some reason. Like one day it will become clear to me as to why I'm suffering from all these things. And so this is kind of what happens, like when I'm reflecting on how the company started, why the company started, why am I doing the things that I'm doing now? And I look back and I'm just saying to myself, like the amount of times that I felt lonely, it's something that was more evident than any of the other things that I was suffering. Because I'd have challenges, I'd, struggle through a lot of things, and fundamentally I didn't have anyone there to help me with them. And sometimes all we need is a bit of a helping hand to navigate difficult circumstances. So anyway, when I went on the dating apps last year and I was like, speaking to a lot of people, I was going on date after date after date for lunch, specifically only lunch during the week because it was the only time that I have free from my young children. So I said like I was going on date after date. I met a couple of people who were really lovely and very nice and everything like that. And eventually in August, I went back onto Tinder. In August, this is when Tinder banned me. I had not done nothing whatsoever to Tinder, but I had like probably about 8,000 people like my profile in about a week, I would say. And then after that, I received the lifetime permanent ban from them. This then progressed me on to like, I decided I'm going to try every other app. Like every other app that I can find, I'm going to try one and see what it's like. And then over this course of this period from September, I was in this car accident and nothing but drama when this person hit me. And I realized like I'm going through so much stuff. I was trying to renovate my house, I'm raising the children, I don't have family support, and also studying, going back to study medicine. And it's like there's a lot of stuff. And I realized I came up with this thing. I just said, you know what, I really don't need a guy. Like traditionally, men and women play a role together in a household. Obviously, understandably, nowadays we have everything and we don't need to conform to traditional gender roles. However, traditionally, this was how it was seen. But I realized I don't need someone in my life. I really absolutely don't need anyone. I don't need a man, I don't need a woman, I don't need anyone.
Hmm.
I can just get on with the things myself. And after 2 months of extremely, extremely difficult, intense period, I just said, that's it. I don't need anyone. I will just continue on with my life. And that's it. I completely accepted it. No more dating apps, no more nothing. I was just like, this is over and done with. And then I was going to attend this startup weekend at the university in the end of October, I think. And I just said, I'm going to go and see what it's all about. I had been doing this business thing when I was in Cambodia last summer with the university. And I've always been entrepreneurial my whole entire life. I've ran other businesses and managed a lot of things. And I just said, I want to see something different. The day before I went to the startup weekend, I was speaking to one of my friends and I was just complaining. I was like, about this whole disastrous of a situation. And I was just like, I'm done with it all, completely done. But what I really, really wanted was someone to hug me.
Mm.
And that was all I was like, that's all I felt like I needed. I was just like someone who's ever so slightly bigger than me, just holds me for like 10 minutes. And this is something I never really had growing up. And I think this is something as human beings we really need. I see this in my children that they're asking when they're upset or something, they really need a hug. And I'm just there to hold them, just for them to feel safe and secure. And so at that time, I was just like, well, where can I do this? I'm like, can I just go and pick a random guy on the street and be like, hey, you're bigger than me. Can you just hold me for 10 minutes? I need you only for this. So, but unfortunately, it's a bit strange for me to do so. So I went and pitched this at the startup weekend that we were, you know, maybe lacking this human connection in the world. And it's not so easy as I've had people tell me, just go to a bar, just rock up in a bar and find someone. And it's not as easy as that. I have young children. I can't just take a night off. I don't drink alcohol. So, it's very strange for me to spend my time in a bar with someone. And also, like, I'm not really into, what usually happens afterwards, let's just say. And so in the end, when we were working on this startup idea, I didn't feel comfortable with what I was proposing because as much as it's a great thing, let's make a service that, make an app or something for people to hug each other, it doesn't really solve anything. Like it might just, you cut your hand and you put a plaster on it and you have to wait for the wound to heal. So it's kind of like we're doing the same thing. We're not actually making a difference anywhere. And so what I said was I said to the team there, I was like, we need to look at the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of the problem is the dating apps, the friendship apps, and social media. Because these are the things that are really, really impacting the way we connect. Our brains are completely changed just based on how we now view each other from all these apps. And so this is where we started with trying to find a solution of how can we really take this on? And that's where we've gone and we're working month after month after month just to make sure that this is the right thing to do and this is what people need. And after all of our speaking, like we've spoken to a lot of people, we have a lot of support, and it's just about getting the awareness out there that we as people, we can make a change. Like if anybody wants to make a change, we can do it. There's no reason as to how and why we cannot do it. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure probably at some point Tinder's got my face plastered on their wall or something. I will wish to go into one of their offices one day. Also the same thing when Bumble also banned me recently. And but the thing is, I'm sure they're not going to like what's going on. And I accept that. We cannot make
Mm,
everybody happy. But
yeah.
what we need to do is stand up for each other and make sure that we connect with each other. Because if we don't have that, not only do we feel lonely, but we're also suffering, each and every one of us.
And I think the loneliness really stands out when it seems like it's transactional, when it is about I've put money in, so I expect to get something back from that. And
Mhm.
I don't even know, or I'm not even prepared to give anything from myself. There's that transaction piece. And that's where we sort of just begin to erode our sense of self, our worth, and our value, and that we are very, very unique and very special people with feelings. And yes, humans who need touch. We weren't designed to be robots who just exist in isolation. So loneliness is a massive pandemic of its own. Um, and and I love this whole concept of Cubble from the moment that I was speaking to Malcolm and he mentioned what you were doing. I was just really curious to sort of know more, because I know one of the other things you've done is you've done a little bit of research, and I don't even want to guess, so I'm going to leave you to give the answer. But who did you find out were the loneliest people through your research?
So
What category?
it's the um Gen Z, I think, the younger people who are now the loneliest people out there. So despite all these interventions about apps and everything, like in the phones and all that, they are extremely lonely. I think it's something like the younger generation are losing a day per week in being able to function and work just due to the fact of anxiety and loneliness
Yeah.
because they aren't able to connect. And I can't imagine that. Like, I mean, I probably, to be honest with you, on my own, lose a day of week due to health difficulties. So I understand the barrier that this causes when you're at a disadvantage of being able to succeed and thrive. But for such a young generation who are supposed to be at the, kind of early stages in their life, the prime of their life, they've got the energy, they're young, they're super energetic and things like this. And when you hear that it's statistically everyone who's losing a day a week, and it's mind-boggling. And it's like, the biggest fear that I have is, and this is probably part of also the driving force, there's many, many, many reasons as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. But I'm afraid for my own children. My children are little, but they're not going to be little forever. And it's hard when you see how when the kids are in school and they're making friends and they're happy and everything, and then slowly that tapers off and something changes. And it's like I don't want my kids to suffer at the end of the day. And I don't want anyone's child to suffer at the end of the day. But unless we do something about it and if we don't do it fast, like it's just going to get so much worse. So we have no choice but to actually stand up and make a change at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it is, obviously we're going to constantly develop, technology is developing, it is out with our control, it's happening at a rapid rate. So there are things out with our control, but as you say, there are things that we can incorporate, that we can focus on, and we can educate our young children and young people about to 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 help them develop as humans with feeling and connection, because it's very easy, and we've seen it time and time again, where you're in the supermarket and, just for peace of mind, the little one is in the trolley, iPad or iPhone in hand, while mom quickly gets the shopping done. And I'm not judging any parent when I bring this up, but you know, we're not thinking of the implication of that habit that is forming um, in that moment where it's giving us 5 seconds of peace. We're not seeing what that's going to how it's going to damage the next generation going forward. So yeah, it's like anything. I remember growing up, my parents, my father complaining about the current generation, and saying, "Oh, even your music is rubbish and terrible, and it's not like the old days." So I know that there's that natural evolution where parents are seeing the future, and it's not the one they've walked through. So there is this sense of it's not the same as it was. We tend to reminisce and romanticize in memory, but for loneliness, touch, connection, Cubble definitely sounds like it has a solution for those that are willing to be brave enough to step into that bubble and explore.
It's really hard for people to make that change. I will not say otherwise.
Mm.
Especially what you're saying about this, the phrase that you just used about how through evolution, like things are changing. When you age, you view things differently. The one thing we mentioned about this child using an iPad in the supermarket or say in a restaurant or something like this,
Mm-hmm.
it's so hard to raise children. And the thing is, though, this is where people then also become extremely lonely. Like everyone is affected by loneliness, like everyone, every age group, everything. However, what they've always said, like if we look back in history and there's a phrase or whatever phrase you can use, there's often some meaning or reason behind why these phrases are said. And so one of them is, it takes a village to raise a child.
Mm.
And it really, really does. It's really hard to take care of children. And this is something I also really understand with, because if you're the sole caregiver of a child or children with no help whatsoever, no family, no financial support or anything like this, the responsibility on you is extremely hard. And as I'm sure we all know, all children are extremely energetic, some much, 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 much more than others. My kids, for example,
Mm.
some less so, but they're all full of energy and they need your time and everything. So it's so hard to give that when you're already feeling at a low because you don't have that support and network. And you don't have maybe friends who can come and help you. And then you're expected to be able to be perfect as such in the eyes of the child. And sometimes that 5 minutes in the supermarket with a tablet, it's like you just do it because you need a break. And everyone needs a break.
Mm-hmm.
Even parents who have children who have the best family support and everything still need a break. And so this is where it's like you also identify there's a big problem, because to keep the world going, we need to have more children. Everyone needs to, not everyone needs to produce children, but like
No.
that would be an interesting case if that were the situation.
Yeah.
But the world cannot keep going unless the children are growing up and the world keeps surviving.
Mm.
So we need to do something about this, because if we're just continuously bringing more children into the world and each of these children don't have good family network and support, it just again keeps snowballing out of control. And I think this is where if we can provide and help support relationships, then everything else will fall into place. And what we've navigated and narrowed down is if you look at most of the problems in the world, and I'm taking a big risk by saying this, but almost all of these problems in the world, if you look at the root cause of all of the problems, they're all down to relationships, the relationships that we build with people, or the communication that we have within those relationships. And so my biggest concern is with all the disasters that happen in the world and everything everywhere and breakdown of relationships, divorces, everything like this, if we can just make a small improvement in these relationships and empower the people to make sure, because like no one's teaching us to have relationships. I mean, you can read a book if you've got the energy to do that, but there's no one out there who is actually teaching people at scale how to have good relationships with people. So I think if we do this, improve the relationships, we'll see a generational shift where there'll be less problems in the world.
Yeah, and I think,
Fingers crossed. I'm hoping
yeah,
for.
well, I don't think you took too much risk saying that. I loved what you said. I also think, there's that aspect of boundaries. There's too many boundaries in the world. And I'm talking, if you look at the planet and you look at all the different borders and boundaries, and they create chasms because they create different cultures, which is fantastic. But the more we're exposed to being able to have access to the whole of the world, we are waking up and realizing that we're not in a safe little bubble where everybody around us all knows the same things. We're all interacting now. We're actually stepping outside of ourselves into a world where it's not all familiar. There are people out there we would maybe never have met before. So we've got an opportunity to learn. And I think loneliness has its place at a certain stage in our lives when we decide that we've learned enough and we want to come maybe and be a little bit more within ourselves and discover more about who the true aspects of who we are. Okay, that can be a lonely journey, but the only way we truly grow is by going out in the world and interacting, communicating with other people, because that's where we get to test and measure our behavior, our thoughts, our feelings against the feedback we get. And so what you're worried about, what I'm most concerned about as a mother of two young adults now, I would say 18 and 20, is that they seem stable. They don't seem to be the kind of kids that ever caused me any problems, but they're so grown up, is my choice of words, because they haven't really broken free or rebelled. And it's not what I would like. I'm not asking for that. But what I'm saying is, isn't that how we grow, when we trip, when we make mistakes, when we are young, so that as we get older, we can look back on those errors and learn from it.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's really interesting. So what is the ultimate dream though? I mean, what would you like to see through the creation of Cubble? And I mean, whatever it is now, it's not going to be down the line because it will continuously evolve. But how do you see the world if Cubble was to take hold and just dominate?
I think my only real vision from all of this is to get people to feel secure within their relationships. I mean, I struggled with this, and I know I've spoken to thousands of people who share similar stories, and it doesn't really matter which experience you went through. The feeling that you are left with is the same. And this is where if we can just improve this a little bit, I don't need to make sure that it makes the world of difference to every single one. If we can just improve a couple of percent of improving the relationship building, the world will look different
It's
in
like a
every place
ripple.
in the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And hopefully over a couple of generations, this will then improve the quality of life for everyone. The biggest thing that I really wish to see is that we don't look at someone and judge them based on how they look. Because And this is the thing, big thing that like it was highlighted to me through these apps is when we're just scrolling past pictures and my heart breaks because I've heard stories of people who, not heard stories, I have spoken to people who have told me that they would change their name on the apps because if they had a foreign sounding name, they wouldn't get any matches on the apps. And so it breaks my heart because you have your name. It's your part of your identity,
Hmm.
part of your culture. And they couldn't share that because people wouldn't want to speak to them. And
Yeah.
it doesn't make a difference where you're from, what background you've had. It matters the here and now and the willingness that you have to give to a relationship or a friendship. And so a lot of these stories that I hear and I speak to people and everything, it breaks my heart because we need to, like, we're in 2024. Like, maybe 100 years ago, you could say the world was a very different place. That we didn't really know much about other countries or other cultures or other people or anything like this. But nowadays, we're all mixed everywhere. And it's like we shouldn't be segregating people just just on what they look like, what race they are, what religion they are, what um if they have a disability or not,
Mm.
or if they're LGBTQIA plus. It doesn't matter. These things don't matter at all. Like really, in the grand scheme of life, they don't. What matters is how you feel as a person and how you treat the people around you. And so I
Yeah.
really want to change this kind of perspective and make sure that we are being treated equally and properly being treated equally. And it's not an overnight fix. It's not going to happen today. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It will take time to fix it. But I think we can do that with the correct procedures in place.
Well, you're young, you're beautiful, and you're passionate. So you have plenty of years ahead of you to make sure that this dream of yours takes flight.
I'd like you to add in there also, and just a little bit crazy. I I
Yes.
introduced myself to the chief entrepreneurial advisor to the Scottish government, Mark Logan, and I was said to him, I might just be a little bit crazy, and I was like, no, 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 I actually am just a bit. And I think it takes a lot to take on something like this, but
Yeah.
I think it's better to have someone who's experienced something so much and have so much pain and suffering and to share that with people because it helps build the trust and relationship because I often felt this myself. I felt so incredibly lonely and whenever I was going to checkups because of my health issues,
Mm.
I just felt like whenever I spoke to a health professional, I was like, you don't understand me. Like you really don't understand me. And I felt even more lonely. And so I hope that I can share more of this in time with people so that they can understand that there are more people out there in the world that just feel as lonely as they do.
I love that. And I think that is a perfect point on which to say thank you very much for joining us today. I think there's just so much more we can talk about, and it would be lovely to have you back again at some other point along the journey, just to see where you're at, how it's evolving, and how you're evolving through the process. Because ultimately, you know, we each have a choice, and you chose to experience loneliness, but find a way through that, find a solution for not only yourself, but potentially for others. Um, and the other option could have been to just wallow in your loneliness and not find a solution. Not everybody has that ability. So you're that pioneer that can, you know, shine the lamp and draw towards you those that experience loneliness or are going through a bout of loneliness and hopefully not have to stay there for too long. So thank you, Jessica. It's just been really such, it's such a big topic. It's hard to touch on everything. But if people want to get in touch with you, reach out to you, or start staying abreast of developments on Cubble, is there anywhere we can send them?
Yeah, we have all the social media links included on Instagram, Facebook. We haven't honestly been very active recently just because we have so much developments within our research and development plans. But yeah, we have LinkedIn, everything, and we have our
Okay.
website. Over time, we will start introducing more things to grow our grow our awareness of the company and the plans.
Well, that's fantastic. I wish you all the best. And guys, just keep Cubble in the forefront of your mind. One day out there, you might see something, you'll go, ah, I listened to that podcast. I heard Jessica speak so passionately in those early days. And I cannot believe what she's achieved. So thank you so much. And
I'd just like to add though, if
mm,
anybody would like to reach out and talk about stuff, or if they ever need to, if they want to join what we're doing, I'm more than happy to have a discussion with anyone about that.
that's fantastic, Jessica. We'll make sure that we have all your links available, especially on our YouTube channel, so that they can do just that. So thank you for joining us all the way from Florida, is it, that you
Yeah,
are
I'm
today?
currently in Florida at the moment.
Fantastic. And look forward to seeing you back in Edinburgh sometime soon. So guys,
Yes.
that's our chat today. I'm sure that you may have more questions than you have answers, but I think that's what the value of this podcast is all about. We don't want you to come away and feel like it's all been solved. We want you to be asking more questions. Where am I? What is my level of loneliness? Have I experienced loneliness? Do I know somebody who is lonely? And what what could I do to understand it more, to help eradicate it with Jessica's guidance? So, Jessica, thanks. We'll be back. And in my next episode that will follow this one, I want to dive a little deeper into the meaning and the power of embracing loneliness, which is a slightly different caveat to what Jessica has spoken about today. But I believe that the two married together will perhaps support each other quite beautifully. So I'll be back next time. Thank you for joining us today and see you again soon. Bye for now.